Hi. So this is another edition or episode of Founder FaceTime. I'm Brand Evangelist, and I am so glad that you're here. Uh, what a time to be alive, y'all. Actually, let me turn down my copyright-free lo-fi music in the background. Um, I'm so excited because I was thinking about how this is a challenging time just in terms of all the things that are grabbing or grasping at our attention. And I was compelled to think back to a time when we were all being told to stay at home and um, completely turn our lives upside down and to pivot. And somehow during that time, we learned to cook, we danced, we got busy building families, we dusted things off that we hadn't picked up in years, old hobbies, new ideas, businesses sprouted and boomed. And I say all that to say, knowing full well that this is a time when a lot of us are being really rocked by the amount of things going on around the world, the good, bad, and ugly. And unfortunately, the bad and ugly a lot of times outweighs the good. Um, and I think one of the things that I always try to remind myself is like the human spirit always triumphs, the human spirit always comes through in our darkest moment collectively, globally. When we could have chosen fear, we made some really beautiful things. Um, and this is a really challenging time, I think, for anybody to be thinking about running a business, let alone starting one. And quite honestly, it's been the thing that has been keeping me up at night, sometimes in a good way because I'm excited about what I'm working on. But if I'm honest, there's also more times than not when I'm like, should I be doing this? Should I be doing this right now? Am I the one to like bring this thing through to the world? And my imposter syndrome is a little quieter these days than it has been in the past, but the whispers are still there, um, of how do I actually see myself? How, insert loving person in your life, but how do I see myself how they see me? You know, like how can I start to really see myself how God sees me? You know, or whatever that might be for you. Maybe it's a mother that really dotes on you. Maybe it's a spouse. Maybe it's your children. Maybe it's a best friend or sister. But, each of us has at least one person that we can think of, and if not a human, maybe it's your pet. And that's the beautiful thing is like, we at least have some opportunity to experience love in this life. And if you can just, and at least what's worked for me, when I think about how I still managed to build in impossible conditions against all odds and still come out the other side feeling hopeful and fruitful. And it has to do with focusing on the areas of my life that reflect the love, the developed, the grown, mature version of who I want to become. And maybe, in that moment, part of my imposter syndrome is actually the perfectionist in me wanting to get there faster, or, you know, feeling like maybe I don't know myself well enough to be able to see how I'm the one who's being handed this opportunity, or who has this opportunity to start this business, or who has this like $1 million idea, $1 billion idea, like whatever it might be for you. But I just think about how it might seem like we should let the imposter syndrome win. Like we should let the inner critic win, and we should just stay under our covers and stay tucked away and not really give a second thought to what it is that we want to be creating. And I don't think we know how not to, Um, I've studied history a good amount of time as well, like back when I was doing some consulting for like different government offices and things like that. And I was very focused on like systemic change and policy um, around like business, entrepreneurship, um, community like development, um, these sort of things, right? And so part of what was important to me to be able to show up to that work with some groundedness was like to learn the history of whatever it might be that I'm supposed to be focused on. So, for example, if I'm working with the business inclusion office, I'm going to be looking at old contracts. I want to learn the history. I want to understand what was it that has happened before, um, and am I noticing any patterns that can help me understand how this thing is going to turn or how it could turn, or even give me context on like what some of the sentiments of people might be today, or why, what's led to people feeling so distrustful of this particular government office, for example, today. And like having history, having context, looking at data, actually going and having conversations with people. Like these are all the ways that we collect data in order to be able to do that deeper systemic policy shift work, right? And so if I were to think about that for me as an individual, if I had to do a paradigm shift to tell myself that no, we're not going to settle for imposter syndrome and just hide under our covers and, let the world crumble and, go to shit. We're actually going to do the hard thing, start the business, put the resources and structures in place that we need to for growth. But in order to get there, to make that paradigm shift, what's missing from the equation? Well, it's the data, it's the inventory, it's the pattern, recognizing patterns, um, going and collecting that information about yourself, and that will help you understand. Okay, wow, well, all this data that I'm collecting about how I'm not qualified to do this, or how I shouldn't be the person to do this, or how this isn't the right time is based on, look at that. Maybe other people's, you know, biased perspectives or opinions, even if well meaning, um, there's a chance that, you know, it's not all mine, right? And so I have to look and see, okay, where are some of the patterns coming from? Where did I add my voice and my inner critic in there, right? And then what can I actually do to shift away from this old outdated policy, this old outdated, wiring in my mind that tells me not right now. Um, and so for me, thinking about the imposter syndrome is just like some faulty wiring, or like something that I could go in and like rewire, retrain, was really helpful, because it meant that it wasn't a part of me. It meant that it wasn't my character necessarily, that it was actually, I don't even want to necessarily say that it's a mood or that it's a phase, but I know that it's something that most all people that are entrepreneurs, founders, leaders in some capacity, we come up against it. And we're especially going to come up against it in times like now, if you're watching this March 2026, when it feels like there's just so much coming at us about all the things wrong in the world. And I think if you can start, if you haven't already, thinking about where you can actually tune out where you're getting some of those perspectives and opinions that just aren't yours. And remember that at one point in time, not very many years ago, we were all, hunkered inside trying to figure out our next moves and our next steps. And we didn't know if the world was ending. We didn't know. Some of us was like, let me go get some toilet paper. Let me go ahead and tell everybody that I know that I love them. Let me go ahead and just work on my eulogy because I got time. Like we got life insurance policies. We started businesses. Like we were busy. We got to it, right? And so for me, I can like joke and laugh about it now and just be excited about the human spirit because it means that we can get through anything, y'all. Like we are resilient. We are wired to be winners. And the world wants nothing like I would say, not, I won't necessarily say the world, the universe, God, source, right? Wants nothing more than for us to be happy and to win. Like, I was reminded earlier watching a different video. Sometimes I tune into podcasts and just talks and things in the morning as part of my morning routines. And this morning there was a video that I watched where she was, talking about this analogy of life being a video game. And it's kind of what I'm saying to you right now about like the possibilities of actually releasing the imposter syndrome because it's not hardwired part of who you are. It's quite literally like a weed that came up in your garden because some of the wrong things got planted and you just got to pull the weed. And I think it even said this in an interview a few years ago because I was in this. I know I have a few tabs open, y'all, but hang with me because I do that. I'm that friend, I'm that person, I'm that designer, that, business person that like has 100 tabs open. So I know I'm going somewhere, hang with me. Sometimes I might forget to close a tab, but it always works its way back around. So anyway, um, but one time a few years back, I was in this cohort and I had gotten this invitation to like, participate in this event. And, I was talking to the organizer and just, was pretty candid with her. And I was like, I really just have bad imposter syndrome right now because I don't know why I'm the one that you're asking to do this. And it's just bringing to my attention that I've got some work to do to feel like I actually deserve good things. And I was like, I don't know when I stopped believing that I deserve good things. And I was like, this imposter syndrome feels like a weed. And that's when it started to click for me. So I'm also not saying that this work happens overnight, but what I am saying is that if your imposter syndrome and looking at the outside world around you is the thing that you feel like is your good reason to stay small or to like not take that leap on that business, on that idea, on that project that God has placed in your heart, that is like keeping you awake at night, begging you to go ahead and do that thing, that this might be another little confirmation for you, another moment for you to just recognize like, hey, maybe this thought or these feelings that not me, not now, not worthy, not ever, um, it's an invitation for me to just dig a little bit deeper. Maybe it's an opportunity for me to get to know myself a little bit better and to do a little bit better of a job hyping myself up, because clearly I don't feel hyped enough for me to be like, this is the opportunity for me. I've called this in. I deserve this. Let's go. And also on the flip side, I would say the imposter syndrome also reminds you a little bit that you're human. Um, that like you're not this mutant that doesn't have any feelings, that's not able to emote. Like you clearly have some pretty strong feelings about, you know, being seen, being authentic, leading, stepping in, whatever it might be. And so at the end of the day, it's just like It's data, like with everything else. And like in the analogy with the video game, there's just levels. That's it. You know, there's so many little things that we'll have to defeat, like on the journey from the beginning of the level to like beating and mastering the level by fighting the king boss. And like, hint, hint, king boss is just us. It's just us. It's just us for some reason, like standing in our own way. Even if it seems like it's other people, it's just us because we've allowed ourselves to like need that validation from that person, to need that mentor to say our business is a good idea, to need that, resource provider to choose us for the grant. But the more you actually spend time focusing on you and remembering that everything that comes along your path, especially as an entrepreneur, as a founder, is data, then you can pivot, I think, a little better. You can be a little bit more resilient. You can take crazy leaps and do things at quote unquote not the right time and be okay on the other side. In fact, be even more inspired because you really showed yourself what you could do. And so I'm just here today to say, you know, hey, friend, you got this. I know the world looks crazy right now, but part of that is because we're running and ducking and hiding while they go get crazy. And actually, the world would probably look a little bit more balanced if we actually were like taking up more space. Like, it's just math. Like, we need more numbers on the field. And I'm reminding myself of that too. Is like, okay, yes, you know, every like turmoil and injustice and evil and challenge and suffering has been going on since the beginning of time. And trust me, I have tried to solve it as a one woman show, and it almost took me out because it's more, it's heavier of a load than any of us can carry on our own shoulders. The best thing that you could do is focus on you, babe. Just be happy. Find the things that only you can do. And I'm going to ask you how will you use your talents? How? And just go do that. We had a practice run at this already in 2020. It's not a drill. Yes, you know, there are battles to be won, not physically, not literally, but we're always overcoming adversity and challenges in our day to day. All these little micro decisions that we have to make. You're already doing it. You're already being a leader in your own life. Maybe you're not counting it where you should be. And so that's why your homework from this FaceTime is for you to take inventory and actually check and see, where is it that you can have a loving reflection of yourself. Write those things down. Is it pets, mothers, fathers, children, friends, circles, whoever? That's your comfort blanket. That's your resource team. Whatever. That's your hype. Those are your hype people, right? Whatever it might be. And then you also want to take inventory and see, how do you respond when you get excited about something? What is it that you're doing? What is it that you're working on when you're most excited, when you feel most in flow? And take that data. And then you also want to look at, what are the stories? What are those narratives that I'm hearing about myself in my head when I'm presented with an opportunity? What happens in my body? How do I feel? And you take that data. And then you also want to look at, what have been some of the things that have been the easiest for you to say yes to without hesitation, and why? Did it let you stay in your comfort zone? Did it feel good, feel familiar? It's a skill you already have. You don't have to stretch. Just notice. And then I would say the last thing that you could take inventory about is, with all of those data points that you have combined, what is it that your imposter syndrome is actually trying to show you? Where can you love on yourself a little bit more? Where can you believe in yourself a little bit more? Where can you actually acknowledge the incredible achievements and strides you've already made in your own life? And more importantly, when will you let yourself believe that you deserve good things? Because let me tell you, your good things become our good news, and we could use a lot more of that right now. So, thank you for joining me in today's Founder FaceTime Spirit Fingers. Yeah, I was going to go at length about some things that I want to start doing and be better at, but I want to show, not tell. So I'll leave it here. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you in our next call. And be sure to check out, I guess, previous podcast videos at this point, and then other places that we are getting established and growing on the interwebs. I'm so happy to be here with y'all. Have a great day.